Hola chiquillos, hoy día quisiera revisar los tiempos verbales del imperfecto y pretérito. Estos dos verbos, estos tiempos verbales nosotros usamos en el pasado y hay que diferenciarlos porque en inglés solamente tenemos el pasado, pero en español tenemos que usar verbos en el imperfecto y luego otros verbos en el pretérito para decir lo que queremos decir. Entonces, por favor, esta hoja es la hoja verde que recibieron antes de que fuimos de Carol. Así que tomen unos minutos para llenar esta parte, la primera parte, y después voy a revisar las respuestas. Así que puedan hacer clic en pause, hacer una pausa para tomar unos minutos. I do want you to actually pause the video so that you can take a minute and fill in at least what you know, at the very least, the conjugations and any of the irregulars that you remember from imperfect and preterite. Okay, chiquillos, I'll just take your word for it that you pause the video. Aquí están las respuestas. Entonces, aquí tenemos los verbos en imperfecto que terminan en a, arre, cambian a aba, abas, habamos en nosotros con un acento y luego haban para ustedes, ellos. Luego los verbos ir, er tienen las mismas conjugaciones y ya, y todos los i's llevan acentos. So just make sure that you're taking notice of that. All of the i's have an accent in every single conjugation. The three verbs that are irregular in imperfect, ir, ser, and ver, iba, era, and veía. So notice that those are irregular in their spelling. The nosotros forms of íbamos and éramos llevan acentos, así que hay que notar eso. Y luego en el pretérito tenemos las conjugaciones de los verbos a, arre. Por favor, ojo, porque la forma yo y el, ella, usted, los dos tienen acentos. También en la forma yo y el, ella, usted, en los verbos y, arre también llevan acentos. So notice that the accent for third person goes over the O for both conjugations. Now, there are a ton of irregulars in preterite. I'm sure you remember. In the yo form, car, gar, zars, the car changes to K. Bueno, so if you want to take a little note here about how that spelling changes, you've got car verbs that change to K in the yo form, gar verbs that change to G-U-E with an accent, and the zar verbs that change to C. Bueno, se with a C E, and the accent goes over the E. Bueno? Third person irregular, so you've got the I's that change to Y. So you have like he read, leyó, bueno, and leyeron, so that I changes to Y in third person. You have a number of stem changers. Notice that in preterite, though, only the verbs that end in IR are going to have stem changes, and there's only two kinds, E to I and O to U in the sole of the shoe, meaning that they only stem change in third person, singular and plural. So we have, to give you an example, dormir, durmiero. Bueno, durmió is going to be our stem change there. And then you have a number of verbs that change completely. The stem, the middle of the verb changes spelling. So querer, tener, I'll show you some examples of those on the back side of the green paper. So you don't need to write down a bunch of those examples. And then you have a few where you're not going to have an accent at all, because in preterite you can see that there are various accents. Bueno. Okay. The bottom part. So chicos, you have uses for each one. When do we use imperfect versus when do we use preterite? And then keywords, palabras claves. So toman unos minutos para llenar lo que puedan y luego voy a revisar las respuestas. Después de estudiar español por unos años, ustedes deberían saber unos usos y también unas palabras claves que hay que usar o notar en una frase cuando es imperfecto o pretérito. Bueno, chiquillos, aquí tienen las respuestas. So habitual actions. Every summer we used to do this. Anything you used to do as a kid. Description or setting the stage for your story, telling the time, the weather, the location, how people were feeling. That's all going to be imperfect. An action that was going on in your story when something else happened. That's going to be imperfect. Simultaneous actions. Actions that were happening at the same time in your story in past tense are going to be imperfect. And some keywords, siempre, a menudo, a veces, todos los sábados, and you can add in whatever day of the week or month or year. Por lo general, normalmente, versus preterite are any completed actions for a specific amount of time. It's been a month since we did something, and then later a day, number of hours, beginning or end of an action, changing of emotions or mind is going to be preterite, and you need to use the verb ponerse for that. An interrupting action, also going to be preterite, a series of events. You're saying this happened, then this, then that. That's all going to be preterite. Keywords that you might use are specific days, or using whatever day, month, or year, and then pasado. Ayer, anoche, esta mañana, luego, próximo, entonces, después. Bueno, quick overview side by side so that you can see the differences between imperfect and preterite. So if you flip this sheet over, you have specific examples, but I also want to bring to your attention verbs that change and that take on a very specific meaning when you use them in preterite. So I know that if you were in Spanish 2 at Carroll, you definitely learned these, and we reviewed them last year in Spanish 3. So to have everybody on the same page, make sure that you know what these are. If you've never seen these before or they don't look familiar, you need to get out a sheet of paper and write these down, because you're going to need to know this information. You're going to be responsible for knowing what these verbs mean in preterite versus when you use them in imperfect. So saber and conocer, both of these verbs that mean to know, obviously in past tense, knew something or someone, versus using preterite for conocer, it means that you met someone. So conocí a, usually followed by a personal a to say who you met. Saber, okay, when using it in preterite, supe, supimos, supieron, means that you found out or discovered something. So how do you know something one time in the past? It's when you found out or discovered. Same thing for conocer. How do you know somebody one time in the past? It's when you met them. Okay, so if you think about it that way, these make sense why they change meaning in preterite. How do you have something one time in the past? Preterite. It's when you got or received it. So tuve, tuviste, tuvo, very specific meanings in the preterite. Almost always we're going to use tener in imperfect for that reason. Querer, wanted, versus in preterite, if you say quise jugar, I tried or intended to play, but it didn't work. So the meaning there, the intention is that it didn't actually happen. Quisimos ir al parque, pero no fuimos. So we tried or intended to go, but ultimately didn't. Same thing when you put a no in front of it. When you use querer in preterite, you're saying that you refused or failed. So that's a very specific meaning. No quise, no quiso. You know? Luego poner, so was able, but when you use it in preterite, it means managed. Bueno, yo pude. Bueno, or if you make it negative, didn't manage. No pude, no pudieron. Okay, chicos, so hopefully you've got these clarified verbs that change meaning in preterite. Y luego, aquí tienen en la otra lado de la hoja verde todas las conjugaciones. So you can see the 3 irregulars that are conjugated at the top in every single conjugation. And then you've got some examples of AR, ER, and IR on the back side of this. What I think you'll need more importantly is the review of preterite. So chicos, you've got all the conjugations for almost all of the irregulars. Here you have a box that tells you about stem changers. You don't have a complete list, but at least you can see where they stem change and how it works. You've got the normal conjugations here in this box. At the bottom, you've got examples of car-gar-zar verbs, and then some Ys as well. This box, these are all of the ones that have a different stem that change. So anduv, estuv, ub, is for aser. So just take notice of that. The reason why that's highlighted in red is because in third person, you know the C changes to a Z. Iso, Hizo. So maybe you want to write that one down. That's over here. And then decir obviously drops the other I. It's not dijeron, it's just dijeron. So you've got a nice list here so that you can see what a lot of those irregular verbs look like. All right, chiquillos, so we're getting into past tense. There was your rapid fire review of conjugations. And within this Mexico unit, we're going to be using a lot of past tense to talk about the Mayas, the Aztecas, and Incas. Bueno, hasta luego, chiquillos. Ciao.